Hey, what's up everyone? TJ here. Today I've got a board I'm really excited to talk with you guys about. We got the 129 centimeter Korua Pocket Rocket. It's a super interesting shape and I've got to put a good bit of time on it. I had like a really cold, icy day out at Keystone. I've taken this thing in the backcountry and had a really nice powder day out at Steamboat as well. And to start this video off, I'm gonna cut to some candid feedback going through the tech and talking about how this thing felt in more firm conditions out at Keystone. Let's get into it. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the day, this is a 129, so it's extremely short. It's a concept board from Korua Shapes and really designed with riding powder and very deep snow as a priority. But let's quickly just talk about the overall shape and the specs. So obviously you can see super wide. It's actually 33 centimeters at the waist. 129 length and super blunted tip. So pretty much the entire length of the board is going to be effective edge. You know, you got your front contact point right here, rear contact point basically at the very tip of the tail as well. So it does hold an edge pretty well when you're actually able to activate that edge. But overall, this has one of the craziest feels I've ever experienced on a snowboard. Another couple specs I want to highlight is you're going to find a 44 millimeter taper, so a very drastic taper, a much narrower tail than nose, as well as a 20 millimeter setback, and it has a full rocker profile. So full rocker running down the length of the board, so super loose this way, but also rocker sideways. Because it is so wide, they threw that in there so you could get a little bit easier leverage for turn initiation. So it's a little bit less effort to pull it from edge to edge with that width. But because it's rockered in every direction, it's probably the loosest board you'll ever ride. You can literally just swivel around in any direction. You can pretty much snowboard down the fall line sideways and not have to worry about your edge catching, actually pick up speed going down the fall line. So definitely a very crazy feel to it. And it's also very stiff. So it's a very lively snowboard. It does have some decent stability when you get it on edge, but it can like chatter out because it doesn't really have much give to it. So when you do carve at higher speeds, as you build up pressure in the board, you can actually lose that edge and start to chatter a little bit, which is a little bit challenging. And you also feel pretty much every bump underfoot as well. You're also gonna find an 8.2 meter side cut in this tiny snowboard. So it has a really long side cut radius, gonna naturally throw you into longer, more drawn out turns. And that combined with the width gives this board a really crazy, kind of hard to control feeling at slow speeds. Overall, definitely still capable on the resort, but probably gonna be the most fun in really deep snow. This board definitely is going to give you the best experience in softer snow and out on deeper days. And like I mentioned before, I did take this thing out in pretty much bottomless conditions out in the backcountry here in Colorado, as well as a very deep resort day out at Steamboat after it snowed about 13 or 14 inches and just kept snowing all day. But real quick, before we get into the powder feedback, there was a couple other things I did want to mention. First, with how stiff and lively this board is, it is going to offer a different carving experience in various conditions. It's not going to offer much dampening, so in those icy conditions like we had out at Keystone, when you really start to throw your weight into those turns, it is going to be much easier to chatter out because there isn't much dampening when you hit any bumps or any like uneven surfaces as you're trying to make those carves. But on like more ideal groomer conditions or on a powder day, which is when I would hope you'd be taking this board out, it actually holds an edge quite well. You know, with the width, you can get those pretty aggressive edge angles, and if you can dig those deeper trenches in those better conditions, I'd say it does hold up pretty well and is going to be pretty fun carving and cruising around as you're trying to get between those powder stashes. But definitely going to be very lively, still stand behind that. You're going to feel pretty much everything underfoot with this guy. I did also mention that with this longer side cut, it is going to be a little bit more challenging to control at slower speeds. It is still manageable though, but it's something that might take a little bit of getting used to, and the personality definitely feels a lot more comfortable once you get up to more moderate and higher speeds, just because it does have such a long side cut on such a short snowboard. I do also want to quickly talk about the split tail you're going to find on this snowboard. When you are carving on groomed or more firm conditions, I think it helps modulate your turn a little bit more, particularly on the exit when you might be throwing your weight a little bit more on the back of the snowboard, and just help make things a little bit more comfortable and give it a bit of a better feel to it. Although that wasn't something I would say is extremely noticeable. One cool thing about it too is if you start to loop out backwards, you know, that can happen on boards with such a short tail sometimes. There's almost no tail outside your back foot on this thing. That split actually grips the snow and puts you back down. So it's very difficult to loop out on it. So I thought that was kind of a cool bonus and something that's kind of fun to play around with out there. All right, now let's talk about how this thing feels in powder and softer snow conditions for a little bit. So first thing I want to address is obviously this is a very small snowboard, much shorter than average, but still going to provide a surprising amount of float. I weigh around 150, 155 pounds, and I think someone who weighs quite a bit more than me is still gonna find ample float in this thing. And in Colorado, we have very dry snow conditions, very light snow, so it's actually a lot more difficult for boards to float in those types of conditions. And this thing did extremely well. Super easy to keep that nose on top of that softer snow and even kind of charge through the powder, a little bit more front foot heavy, definitely super comfortable, evenly weighted on this snowboard. But one of the most noticeable things on this snowboard, other than the float you're gonna find, is how nimble it is. And I think there's a couple of call outs there. First, you know, when you are in powder, you're already kind of floating. It's much easier to transition from edge to edge. But aside from being in those snow conditions, I want to call out that 3D base shape, that sideways rocker. First, it's not through the entire length of the snowboard. There is kind of a regular flat section in the middle, so you're not balancing on like a tiny part of the board on hard pack. But towards the edges on the toe and heel side edge, it is going to kind of bevel up and have a little bit of reverse camber, like rocker shape to it. And that just gives you an effortless, super maneuverable feel in soft snow conditions, as well as the fact that this board basically has no tail to it. So anytime you want to kick that tail out and get a pow slash in, there's going to be very little resistance because of that combination of just not much surface area in the back, as well as that 3D rocker. It has a very unique feel to it. It's extremely maneuverable in soft snow, and the closest thing I could compare it to for reference would be like a fish style snowboard. It does have a similar kind of shape, but you know, it doesn't have the fish notch cut out in the tail. Basically no surface area in the back, a huge amount of surface area, huge nose on the front of the snowboard, and just gonna really provide that ultimate maneuverability. It does have a bit of a different feel compared to your standard fish, just with the crazy rocker contours and the extreme width you're gonna find in this snowboard. So if you're looking for something that's just really unique, something that's gonna be like a conversation starter in the lift line and offer a riding experience that you're not really gonna find anywhere else, consider the Korua Pocket Rocket. I know they don't make a ton of these each year, so if you can get your hands on one, if you're interested in this type of board, I'd try to pick one up. This is gonna be on the main line for Korua moving forward, and it is gonna have standard insert packs moving forward as well, just like this board. It's not gonna have that channel built into it anymore. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stoked I got to try this one out and talk to you guys about it a little bit. If you do want to read more about it, I'll have it linked down in the description below. And if you by chance have had the opportunity to ride this board, let me know what you think about it down in the comments. You can leave any questions for me down there as well. Drop a like if you got some value. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I appreciate all you guys. Hope y'all are having a great winter. I'll see you in a new one soon. Take care, everybody.